The air at the royal wedding felt cold, even though the sun was out. Frost hung in the air, but it wasn't just from the weather, it was also from the cold looks and fake smiles people were giving each other. I stood alone by the gift table, trying not to be noticed. I wore a plain beige dress that covered me well. It wasn't fancy like the other guests' dresses, and it definitely wasn't new. It was the only formal dress I had that still fit me after 3 years of hard work and tough times. My hands were shaking. It wasn't because of the cold, but because I felt embarrassed. I knew I didn't fit in here. I could feel it in the way people glanced at me, then looked away like I didn't belong. Before we go on, think about this. What would you do if you were in my place? Would you speak up or stay quiet? Be honest. Let me know what you'd do in the comments. Anyway, let's get back to the story. Just as I was trying to keep to myself, I heard someone whisper, "Don't let her near the bride." I heard it clearly. Every word. It stung. The voice belonged to my cousin Julie's friend. This was Julie's wedding. She was the bride. It was a huge, fancy event at the Monroe estate, a big old house covered in ivy up in upstate Mississippi. Even though I was family, nobody treated me like it. I had married young and had to take a job as a housekeeper just to get by. I didn't match the Monroe family's idea of success or status. That was clear. Then came the moment that truly crushed me. I was trying to walk toward the cocktail area when I heard a loud voice shout, "She's just the housemaid." It was my own father. He slammed his whiskey glass down on a waiter's tray so hard it made a loud crack, like a whip. Everyone stopped and stared. "You think that necklace makes you someone, Natalie?" he shouted at me. My heart dropped. I stood still. People were watching now. His face was red with anger. The veins in his neck looked like they were about to burst. Before I could say anything, he grabbed the silver necklace I was wearing, the last gift my mother gave me before she died, and pulled it so hard it broke. He held it up like it was garbage and yelled, "No daughter of mine pretends to belong here." Gasps came from the guests. One of my aunts winced, and an older cousin turned away, not wanting to watch. But no one stepped in to stop him. I stood there, feeling small, ashamed, and completely alone. I clenched my fists tightly. My heart was pounding, but not from sadness anymore. It was something else, something darker. It had been building inside me for years. Years of staying quiet, doing what I was told, and feeling hurt by the people who were supposed to love me. All of that pain had turned into something stronger. "Don't talk to her," my stepmother whispered sharply to a group of teenage cousins. "She just cleans houses now." I heard it clearly. It didn't surprise me anymore. They had looked down on me for years, ever since I started working as a housekeeper. To them, I wasn't part of the family anymore. I was a disappointment. I turned slowly toward the entrance of the mansion, but a security guard stepped in my way. He leaned in and said, "You've been asked to wait outside." Outside. In the cold. While my family stayed inside, drinking and laughing under golden chandeliers. They toasted to love and legacy. And I was told to leave, like I was nobody. So I did. I stepped out of the grand estate, my heels crunching over the frost-covered gravel path. My breath came out in small white clouds. I folded my arms and stood still, not crying. I never let them see me cry. Not anymore. Then I heard it, a low engine sound, deep and powerful. Headlights cut through the evening fog. A black Rolls-Royce pulled up in front of the estate. It moved slowly, smoothly, like it didn't belong to this world. The driver stepped out quickly and opened the back door. And that's when he stepped out. My husband, Tyler Posey. He wore a sharp, dark gray coat, the collar pulled up against the cold wind. His face was serious, strong. His eyes were cold like ice, and his jaw tight with anger. He looked powerful because he was. When my father saw Tyler, his face went pale. He froze. I could tell he hadn't expected him to show up. My father hadn't seen Tyler in 3 years. Not since our small courthouse wedding. A wedding my family didn't attend because they said I was marrying out of desperation. But Tyler was no ordinary man. He was the head of Posey Ventures, a billionaire, a tech genius, the kind of man who was feared in business meetings and respected across the country. And he was mine. The front doors of the mansion swung open. Everyone inside turned their heads. They all saw him coming. Tyler didn't sneak in. He walked like he owned the place, calm, quiet, but full of power. He stopped in the middle of the room, where my relatives were still standing, shocked. Then, in a low, steady voice, he asked, "Who touched my wife?" No one answered. My father opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked terrified. Tyler stood there, strong and sure. And in that moment, the people who once looked down on me finally realized something. They had underestimated the wrong girl. I stood behind the big glass doors, watching everything happen from the cold. I didn't move. I wanted to see what my father would say now that the attention wasn't just on me, but also on the man standing beside me. Tyler's voice cut through the quiet, calm but firm. "Who sent my wife out into the cold?" Inside the room, the mood changed immediately. You could feel the tension, like a storm waiting to break. Aunt Shirley looked down at her small purse. Uncle Michael took a long sip from his champagne glass, pretending not to notice. Someone behind the harpist coughed, but no one dared say a word. Then my father stepped forward. He let out a small, awkward laugh and walked ahead like this was all a big mistake. "Tyler, son, look, we didn't know she was she showed up dressed like." Tyler raised his hand. Just once. And my father stopped talking immediately. "Natalie Posey," Tyler said, loud enough for everyone to hear. He turned slightly, making sure every single guest could hear his words. "She is not just my wife. She is the strongest woman I know." The room went silent. "She came from nothing," Tyler continued. "She worked hard for everything she has. And through it all, she stayed kind, even while the rest of you care more about names, titles, and wine labels than real people." He slowly looked around the room. His eyes were sharp, and his voice grew colder with every word. I saw my cousin Julie's new in-laws shift in their seats, clearly uncomfortable. Her groom, James, looked frozen like he didn't know what to do. This was not part of their perfect wedding plan. Then I spoke, softly but clearly. I stepped back into the room, my voice barely louder than a whisper. "I was told to wait outside." Tyler turned to me right away. His expression changed as soon as he saw me. His cold, sharp look melted into something soft and full of care. He reached for my hand, gently, like I was the only one in the room. "I didn't want to ruin the wedding," I whispered. "You didn't," he said. "They did." He brought my hand to his lips and kissed my knuckles. Then he turned back to face the room, his voice strong and steady again. "Let me be very clear," he said. "If one more word is said against my wife, you'll find out how many contracts I can cancel in this town, or how quickly the Monroe name can lose its so-called respect." No one dared to speak. The threat was real. Tyler had power. He funded most of the city's new tech projects. Without him, many businesses would struggle. Everyone knew it. And finally, standing beside him, they all knew something else too. I was no longer the girl they could push aside. Tyler stood tall, calm, and powerful. My father looked like he wanted to disappear. What most people in the room didn't know was that Tyler had backed almost every major investment Julie's new father-in-law had ever made. Without Tyler's support, their money and reputation would fall apart faster than the champagne pouring from the fancy fountains in the middle of the reception. One word from him, and their empire would crumble. I didn't mean anything by it," my father said, stammering, trying to sound innocent. "It was just emotions running high." "She's just the housemaid," I repeated slowly, staring straight into his eyes. He flinched, and Tyler's jaw tightened again. "I married her," Tyler said, stepping closer to me protectively. "But long before that, she saved me." The room went silent again. When no one else believed in me, when I was struggling and lost, she saw something good in me. She's the reason I became who I am today. And today, you embarrassed her in front of the very people who once claimed to love her. I could feel it. The whole room changed. The silence wasn't just uncomfortable anymore. It was fear. Real, heavy fear. Tyler looked directly at my father and said, "Apologize to her."
Right now.
or I will destroy this family in ways you can't even imagine." My father's lips moved, but no sound came out. He looked small, weaker than I had ever seen him. This was the same man who once told me, "You'll always be nothing but a burden." He's the one who laughed at my cleaning jobs, who called me low class when I scrubbed floors at restaurants to pay for nursing school. He told me I was wasting my life the day I left home with just 2 suitcases and no real plan. And now, that same man stood in front of Tyler, my husband, looking pale, quiet, and unsure. Everyone in the room watched him like he was a stranger who didn't belong anymore. My father started, eyes darting around the room, hoping someone would step in to help him. But no one moved. "Say it," Tyler said again.
Calm. Clear.
"Not for me. For her." My father's face twisted. He was trying to fight back the words. Pride had always ruled him. But now, fear was stronger. Not just fear of Tyler, but fear of everything Tyler could take away with a single phone call. "I'm sorry, Natalie," he said at last. The words came out stiff like they hurt his throat. "I'm sorry for calling you that and for the necklace." He looked at the floor. The girl he once pushed aside now stood beside the man who could crush everything he cared about. And suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. I shouldn't have. My father's voice faded away. I didn't nod. I didn't speak. I just stared at him, letting the silence grow heavy. I wanted him to feel every second of it, to sit with the weight of what he'd done and the years he thought I would never rise above. He used to think I'd always be beneath him. Tyler turned to a woman standing nearby, the event coordinator. His voice was calm but firm. "Get the necklace," he said. "And while you're at it, bring the event manager." The woman nodded quickly and rushed off. The room stayed quiet, full of tension. Tyler turned back to face the crowd. "I didn't come here to ruin a wedding," he said evenly. "But when my wife is treated like a servant, pushed outside into the cold, and embarrassed in front of her own family, don't expect me to stay quiet. Not anymore." Some of the guests began to slowly turn away, pretending to sip their drinks. The music, which had stopped earlier, started up again, but no one really cared about it anymore. The mood had shifted. The celebration was gone. And then Tyler delivered the final blow. "Since we're all among family here," he said, looking toward the groom's side, "you should know something else." People leaned in, curious and nervous. Tyler didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "The Monroe estate," he said, pausing just long enough for everyone to listen. "The one you're all so proud of. My firm bought the remaining loans on it last week." Gasps echoed through the hall. "This morning," Tyler continued, "the title transferred." My Aunt Shirley let out a soft, "What?" Tyler pulled a folded paper from his coat. "It's true," he said. "Ownership is now under Posey Holdings." Then he turned to me, his voice gentler. "And the new co-signer on the property," he handed me the paper, "is Natalie Posey." I felt my breath catch. I looked down at the paper in shock. My name was there on the deed. I hadn't known. Tyler had kept it from me until now. The silence in the room exploded into whispers. I heard Julie's mother gasp. My uncle cursed under his breath. All around me, heads turned, voices lowered. Everything had changed. My father turned pale. His mouth opened slightly, as if he couldn't breathe. You bought this estate?" he asked, voice cracking. "This house, this land, it's been in our family for generations." Tyler looked him straight in the eye, steady and strong. "And it still can be," he said, "if you treat my wife with the respect she's always deserved. If not, you'll need to move out by March." I looked down again at the paper with my name on it. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't to hurt anyone. It was a promise to myself. A reminder that I didn't fight through all that pain just to survive. I came through it to live, with pride. I stood tall, finally owning the very room that once kicked me out. "Let's go," Tyler said softly, standing beside me. But I didn't move, not yet. I took one last look around and turned to face my father. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "You once told me I was just a housemaid. But now it turns out this house belongs to me." Then I turned and walked away, with Tyler by my side. We exited through the same big, fancy doors they had once pushed me through like I didn't matter. But this time, no one dared turn away. They all watched me now. Tyler took off his coat and gently draped it over my shoulders. His touch was soft, but I could feel the strength behind it. He was calm on the outside, but I knew the storm that lived in him, especially when someone hurt me. "You okay?" he whispered as we stepped into the cold evening air. "I don't know," I said honestly. I felt like I was still burning inside. Everything that had just happened was spinning in my head. I thought I was used to how my family treated me, but this felt like they spit on me in front of the whole world. Tyler stopped beside the car. The black Rolls-Royce waited quietly at the edge of the estate's driveway. He turned to face me, lifted my chin with his hand, and looked into my eyes. "They don't see you, Natalie," he said gently. "They never really did. But now they have to." The car door opened, but I wasn't ready to leave, not yet. Behind us, the estate glowed with warm golden light, like a jar full of fireflies. It looked peaceful from the outside, but I knew what was really happening in there. People were probably trying to save face, trying to act like nothing had happened. But something had happened. Not just to me. Tyler had shifted everything. The balance of power, the way they saw me, the way they'd remember this night. And he did it not with shouting, not with anger, but with truth backed by real strength. "You really bought the estate?" I asked as we finally slid into the back seat. "I did," he replied. "Last week. I was planning to surprise you. I didn't expect this." He looked out the window, his jaw tense. "I should have stepped in sooner." "No," I said softly. "I needed to see it. I needed to feel it again, to remember why I left." The car began to move, slowly taking us away from the Monroe estate. But the feelings didn't leave. They stayed, stuck to me like thorns under my skin. As we drove back to our home, far from the fake smiles, pride, and perfect walls of the Monroes, I finally understood something. I didn't just survive what they did to me. I rose above it, and I would never go back. I stood in front of the mirror, staring at the empty spot on my neck where my mom's necklace used to be. It felt like something was missing, not just the necklace, but a part of me. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept hearing their laughter, the whispers, and the sharp sound of a chain breaking. But in the middle of those painful memories, I also kept hearing Tyler's voice. "Who touched my wife?" At 2 a.m., I opened my laptop. I stared at the screen for a while, then finally started typing an email. It was to my old nursing professor, the one who always believed in me and used to say, "You should teach someday." Maybe it was time, not to get revenge,
but to grow.
to step forward, to take control, not just by owning buildings or land, but by owning my future. 2 weeks passed. Then a letter arrived. A formal apology from the Monroe family. It was typed, notarized, and cold. I didn't reply. But what really shook things up was something else. Julie's wedding photos started going viral. Someone had caught the exact moment Tyler stood up for me, pointing directly at my father, the same man who once called me worthless. The internet didn't laugh or joke about it. Instead, people were curious. They started asking, "Who is the woman in the beige dress? Why did a billionaire defend her like she was royalty?" And just like that, the girl they once called a maid was everywhere. Articles popped up. Wife of billionaire Tyler Posey stands tall after being shamed by her family. Modern Cinderella, humble woman shines in high society scandal. Housemaid turned queen. Natalie Posey's viral moment inspires women everywhere. I didn't ask for attention, but I wasn't going to hide from it either. 3 months later, I stood at the podium of the Westbridge Women's Foundation Gala. I wore a deep emerald gown. It wasn't flashy or loud. It was simple, strong, and beautiful. The kind of dress that didn't need to shout wealth. It simply said, "I've arrived." The room was filled with women leaders, teachers, survivors, fighters. Women who knew what it felt like to struggle, to be ignored, to be told they weren't good enough. I looked out at all of them. I took a deep breath, then spoke. 3 months ago, I said, I was told to wait outside in the cold. Not by strangers, but by my own family.
Why?
Because I didn't wear a certain kind of dress. Because I once scrubbed floors to make ends meet. Because I didn't look like someone they thought was worthy. I paused. The room was silent. But I'm here now. And I didn't get here in spite of where I came from. I got here because of it. Silence filled the room. I hadn't asked to be saved, and I didn't want revenge. But standing at that podium, remembering everything I'd been through, I felt something deeper stir inside me. That moment reminded me of a hard truth. No matter how far we climb, some people will always see us as who we used to be, not who we are now. A few people nodded. Some eyes welled with quiet emotion. I took a deep breath and kept going. What changed my life, I said, wasn't just marrying someone powerful. It was learning to stop waiting. Waiting for people to accept me. Waiting for approval. I stopped asking for space and started taking it. I stopped whispering and found my voice. I stopped feeling small and started standing tall. The applause started slowly. Then it grew louder and stronger. It wasn't just polite clapping, it was real, full of warmth and understanding. After the event ended, women lined up to speak with me. Some asked about Tyler, but most didn't. They asked about starting over, about healing old wounds, about how to break the silence that had followed them through generations. I didn't leave that night with pity or fake praise. I left with something real. I left with influence. 3 days later, I returned to the Monroe estate, not to argue, not to get even, but for closure. I didn't want anger in my heart anymore. Tyler came with me, dressed simply. No suit, no show. I wore a plain navy blouse, jeans, and flats. No makeup, no jewelry. Just me. My father opened the door. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. Smaller somehow, like life had taken something away from him. "Natalie," he said, voice rough and quiet. "I didn't come to fight," I told him gently. "And I'm not here to forgive what I'm not ready to forgive. But I needed to look you in the eyes, not to hate you. Just to tell you that I've moved on." He didn't speak. Just nodded. I turned slightly and looked at the estate behind him, the grand house that once made me feel so small. "This place has nothing left that I need," I said. He opened his mouth, maybe to apologize again, or to explain something. But I didn't stay to listen. I turned and walked back to the car where Tyler was waiting. He gave me a soft smile and reached out to gently squeeze my hand. "You sure?" he asked. "I'm sure," I said. Because revenge wasn't about owning the estate or proving anything. Real victory was walking away from that house without needing anyone's permission to feel whole. That was the moment I finally felt free. Today, I give talks at women's colleges. I stand in front of classrooms filled with young women and speak about strength, choices, and healing. I share my story, not to get sympathy, but to show what's possible when you refuse to stay broken. I also mentor teenage girls who come from difficult homes, girls who feel invisible, forgotten, or unwanted. I see parts of myself in them. I remind them that their past doesn't define their future. I tell them that their pain doesn't make them weak, it can be the reason they rise. I'm also starting my own nonprofit. It's for survivors of family abuse, neglect, and emotional harm. A place where people can get support, education, and real tools to rebuild their lives. I want to create a space that says, "You matter. You always have." And for the first time in a long time, I'm using my voice, not to yell, not to fight, but to build something that lasts. Something that helps others. As for my mother's necklace, the one that was torn from my neck that day, I never fixed it. I never had the chain put back together. Some things are better left broken. Not because they're worthless, but because the break reminds us of the strength we found without them. But I did keep one small piece of the necklace. I had it turned into something new, a silver ring that I now wear on my right hand. It's simple but meaningful. I don't wear it to remember the pain. I wear it to honor the girl I used to be, the one who stood outside in the cold, thinking she didn't belong. That girl thought she had to beg for a seat at the table. She thought she had to prove her worth, to shrink herself to fit in. But now I know the truth. She was never meant to sit quietly and wait for permission. She was meant to own the entire room. Every time I look down at that ring, I think of her. I think of the cold air that night, the whispers, the broken chain. But I also think of the fire in her heart. I think of how far she came and how much she had to fight for her place, not just in a family or a room, but in the world. And now I carry her with me, not as a broken piece of the past, but as the strongest part of who I am today. I don't need anyone's approval. I don't need to be accepted. Because I already belong. And I always did.